Welcome to First Line Compliance's Carefully Off the Cuff.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining. I'm Josh.
And I'm Ray, First Line Compliance. Thanks for joining us. Josh and I were talking today. We had a great conversation on something, and we thought we'd bring it up. And that has to do with concepts of fair lending. I know we talk about fair lending. There's a lot of things out there, there's enforcement actions. But really what we're now seeing is a trend of things, and whether it's things about diversity and inclusion, or CDFI, or affordable housing. There's a lot of terms being thrown out there, triggered either by enforcement actions, or how do we change the market? How can we tap the market differently than we have? Interest rates are going up, so you get these terms and issues. But I think their idea of a collective kind of thing about, I'm going to say, fair lending related issues, but you can call it diversity related issues, or Josh, we saw an issue just now, another enforcement action, DOJ, similar issues. This is a bank, if I remember correctly, Park National, and they had the fair lending issues that we've seen and we got to address. But there's a particular element I thought that was interesting, and again, kind of folds in with all of these things. I want you to talk about that.
Yeah, so you raised the Park National Bank. So the most recent redlining settlement, this one was about $9 million. Of the issues raised was a violation for failing to serve limited English proficiency consumers. I know we've done our LEP talk, so I'm not going to go all the way down that rabbit hole, but I do think it's important.
Do the link. You'll see it here somewhere, or something like that.
Oh, it's coming. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But I do want to bring it up because I think it's representative of a few issues that are coming together, items that we've talked about that have largely been anecdotal, that now have actual support behind them. Anyone who's listens to me, apologies in advance, over the last couple of years, I've been saying failing to serve LEP consumers carries fair lending risk. Now we see an actual settlement with a violation by a bank failing to serve LEP consumers. So one of the things we've raised is the risk, where's the risk tolerance? Where's the risk calculus? Is it better to do nothing or better to do something? Clearly now there is evidence it is better to do something than nothing. The risk of an English-only policy puts banks at risk. There are some who may say, well, that's a bank with CRA. That's different. They have different obligations of serving their market. I would argue this is an issue that is incumbent on anyone in the lending and financial services industry. We don't have to look far, but New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, who have all brought about CRA requirements for independent mortgage banks, non-depositories. Part of those expectations are front and center, as Ray mentioned, to kind of putting it all together. So where are we opening branches? What is the makeup of our employees? What are our outreach through marketing and advertising? And what types of services are we offering to the community? Are we doing first-time homebuyer seminars in one market, but not the other? And do those markets have a racial or language tone to them that sets the conversation? Before I turn it back, I just want to, I've been using it, so I've got to give the credit where credit is due. A friend, Rosalind Hardy, said, the market is there. It's just time we climb the trees. Mm-hmm. The low-hanging fruit has been picked. And what I think she means by that is the borrowers that are going to be served in this market and the market of the future really don't look like or sound like the borrowers that we've been serving over the last couple of years. And so these notions of diversity, equity, inclusion, affordable housing, limited English proficiency, fair lending, they're all coming together. We've said for a while, and there's the famous phrase, we can do well by doing good. I think that's moving more from just a business slogan or a good platitude to more of an expectation from regulators and an obligation amongst lenders.
Agreed. I see the other things we're seeing that get terminology we talked about is affordable housing, and I've heard that that's taken a big turn, and obviously with the rates higher, people are talking about that. They're looking for solutions. There are things like special purpose credit that if you really understand ECOA, you actually can make adjustments on loan programs that benefit a minority group. I mean, we have to be statistically sound that it makes sense, but there are ways to do it. I've had these conversations. I'm glad to have conversation with anybody who wants to talk about it and say, actually, no, we can do a product that has this niche in it because they actually have a different perspective on either banks or credit scores or whatever, that we can make adjustments and it's still ECOA compliant. So there's opportunity out there to make affordable housing. We've heard about CDFIs and lenders out there who are doing that.
Brandon, let me stop you real quick.
Go ahead.
CDFI, Community Depository Financial Institution. Give me the 30-second bumper
Go ahead, please.
No. So a CDFI, it's an organization who has a specific focus of serving primarily underserved communities. Because of the specific CDFI designation, there are waivers or exemptions from certain requirements like the ability to repay. So there's a different methodology of determining that loans are safe and sound, but it goes beyond just verifying or validating that the borrower's ability to repay exists exclusively through verification of income, assets, liabilities, things like that.
Correct. And it's not like everybody can be a CDFI, but you either can broker. There's different opportunities to either participate in them, I believe. Those are things to look into. Or again, it goes back to special purpose credit as an alternative. There's certain things we can do. But here's the funny thing, and we come up, and we're making this a shorter one, I think a quick one. We want to make sure we get to the point, and that's the interesting of a lot of this comes back to HMDA, doesn't it? So in other words, if you want to know how you are performing and where your opportunities are, which we've said this before, we start with the HMDA data. There's technology out there to find out, well, where aren't we lending and where are others lending and what can we do? And then I think it's all part of a strategy, whether it's diversity inclusion or limited English proficiency, of how to tap into those markets or the solutions, right? Maybe. So while HMDA really is maybe the data, redlining on the flip side is the result if we don't do it correctly. There's a lot of tools here that we could maybe use to really get into a point of seeing the opportunity. And it starts with our HMDA and fair lending performance, which we've talked about ad nauseum, but now we realize it's not just, well, I got to look at fair lending, a few times a year and HMDA on March 1st. Use those, look at the opportunities, and then come up with the solutions and have a kind of a broader strategy. And dealing with this. So I think that was kind of the thing I wanted to bring in. I think going forward, I have ideas of how we can tie some of these together, because it's not about just one of these elements. It's multiple elements coming together to find out how we can, going, like you said, how we can do good, right? So anyway, that's kind of, I think, the key point that we want to bring up today.
So I'll just kind of add on. So to the HMDA data, there's a lot of HMDA data that's available and publicly reported, and the regulators have access to. Lenders know the nuance and have greater data than that which is reported. So when we're doing regression or statistical analysis testing, one of the things we're looking for is, do we have other data that contradicts or waters down the claim that there was a variation? So is geography one of the reasons for a variation? Was it the fact that there were seller credits that caused a variation in points and fees and a lower APR? It's really incumbent, as we've said, not only that lenders know their story, but are able to access that information and come up with a strategy to both identify where there's weaknesses, but to also identify where there's strengths and to build upon those strengths. I would say we're all looking for additional volume right now. In a market where the pie is shrinking, we need to find a way for that bigger piece of the pie. I've been using that analogy a lot. I also think it's time to maybe pause. If we think back to the 2020, 2021 timeframe, when literally we were throttling volume by increasing rates because we were too busy, we were too busy to change. Now we're too poor to change because we don't have enough volume. We need to stop going from one extreme to the other and identify that to move forward, we're going to need to find some balance. And I think that balance is both the willingness to make decisions and implement actions, consider technologies, perform the reviews that help us understand where those opportunities lie. It's a time to reinvest, even though it may be difficult when budgets are down. If we wait until volume picks up, we're going to be too busy again. So I think both in identifying strategies as well as how we achieve those strategies is something that we actually have time to do now, and it's important to do that.
And so really the takeaway here is if you're at a mortgage company, I don't care if you're the CEO in compliance or operations, and you're trying to figure out how this how to make value out of this, I think the first thing is to have conversations internally about these things, about what is a CDFI, what is special purpose credit, what about diversity inclusion, and are we doing where are we marketing, and looking at the Honda data, we really don't penetrate here this market, as maybe we should do more. Talk about the tools and the ideas together as to what you might think to resolve the issue. And to be honest with you, this is not, I mean, it is altruistic. I think it's important. We need to get affordable housing. We've got other opportunities, but it's good for business too. And I think that's how you have to look at it. This is good for business too, but you got to start having the conversation internally about what's our strategy. What can we do? And again, affordable housing, diversity inclusion, limited English proficiency. These are the key, kind of buzzwords, if you will, you want to talk about, because they all blend together to ultimately what is fair lending and Honda and so on and so forth. They're all kind of related now. Use it, but have those conversations internally. And that's my takeaway.
Let me just add, and maybe we'll close out here.
Yep.
As you're having those conversations, if you're having a hard time coming up with options or what solutions may be, it's an indication to broaden the circle. We'd love to talk to you and share our ideas. If there are others outside the normal group that you can bring in, especially those that don't look like or sound like us, they're going to have a way of bringing new ideas. It's one of the secrets behind diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we include other voices, we get better ideas, we get better suggestions, we come up with new ways of thinking that we haven't considered before. Because doing it the way we've always done it doesn't mean it's the way it's supposed to be done.
Pretty much. That's it. So that's our takeaway today.
Thanks everyone for joining. As always, subscribe, like, review. Would love to hear your feedback, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.